evening, everybody. Is I, Nick, Pennsylvania, back as I am with my good friend Brendan Bond. How are you this evening, Brendan?
I'm doing excellent, Nick. How are you tonight, bud?
I am all right. I was talking just a little bit ago about feeling a little overwhelmed, just been really busy with a lot of stuff, and that makes me especially happy to be talking to you this evening because one, I have not prepared at all. And it's a good thing too, because I don't know when I would have been able to find the time to do that. And two, you are talking about one of our favorite topics. All I know is that's fresh water, which is rejuvenating, a
Yes, yes.
freshwater cryptid, which of course you put those three words together, and I think about my rant that some people have commented upon about so many freshwater cryptids seem to be in man-made lakes.
hmm
How does this happen? So, what is the story that you're bringing to the table today?
So, what we're going to talk about today is something that I had not heard of until recently. And again, it's one of those things like, for how many podcasts we listen to and how many books we read and shows we watch, whenever I come across something that's new, I'm always like, how have I not heard of this? And then you start digging into it and you're like, geez, where did this come from? And oftentimes there's a pretty serious history to things. I wasn't sure what I was going to find, but I thought this would be a fun thing to cover. Have you ever heard of Lake? Not even getting into the weird stuff. Have you ever heard of Lake Baikal? Baikal.
I want to say I have, but is it in Minnesota?
No, it is not. It is in Siberia.
Oh, then no, I've never heard of that. No.
So so you might have heard it in passing in like a Trivial Pursuit game or something like that, because it is known as the oldest and deepest freshwater lake in the world. Which is saying something, as we're used to the Great Lakes here in our neck of the woods, which are very old and very deep. But Lake Baikal is in Siberia, in Russia. Its depth, 5,387 feet.
That is crazy. How did this now, I'm probably going to ask a question that you don't know. Do we know how it formed?
Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask a geologist, they will tell you that it is a 30 million year old uh, fissure that opened up due to some tectonic shifting and everything.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah. Now, if you ask I'm not sure how to pronounce this. I'm going to say the Buryat people. They have a whole story about how it was created too that we'll actually get into. um,
Is it
so
less reasonable?
you know what? That's a hard thing to answer because I've never seen a plate shift, a tectonic plate.
Oh,
So
sure you have.
so I mean, probably
Plate
very
videos?
slowly, but you can forgive people for not assuming that's the impetus for some of these things.
Sure. All right. Well,
Uh,
tell me more.
but yes, but apparently, from a geologic standpoint, I'm being a little facetious. Obviously, it's a 30 million year old body of water that has been there throughout many cycles through different ice ages and warming and cooling periods and lots of different geologic formations and everything. A lot of people refer to it as almost like a evolutionary island because it is when we say evolutionary island, we don't mean a physical island. We mean that it is kind of on its own and a bit isolated, which was something that obviously Charles Darwin made very popular looking at the Galapagos Islands. But so you have a lot of species there that are unique and unusual. And we'll get into some of those a little bit later because I think some of them are fun to talk about. Some old favorites and some really cool new ones. But so if you look at Lake Baikal on a map, there's not a whole lot around it. I mean, there are like, cities and everything, and the area has been inhabited, uh, you know, from time immemorial, but it's not like it is right near a major metropolitan area. It's kind of on its own. As you can imagine, it being such a unique place and so kind of out of the way and everything from a lot of the major happenings, it has kind of an insulary community, a bunch of like insular communities around it, and these lead to folklore, as we all know. So there's a lot apparently going on in this lake, but the one that I was turned on to that I'd never heard of was a passing reference to the Lake Baikal swimmers, where someone was referencing them as these aquatic humanoids that the Russian military ran into in the 80s, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting."
Yeah, indeed it does.
Yeah, I was like, you have piqued my interest. And not that that's necessarily a hard thing to do, but I'm here for it. So the story of the Lake Baikal swimmers starts in 1982. And depending on who you talk to, this kind of goes in a few different ways, but the most widely circulated story has, or all the different circulated stories have a few kind of key beats that I want to go over. So you have these divers that were apparently military divers who were doing these exercises, and they in 1982, like I said, they were working on some sort of underwater structures, and they were about 150 feet down, which is pretty deep. Like that's not an easy thing for anybody to do in any year.
Sure. Still no 5,000 feet.
It's not 5,000 feet. Yeah, they are very literally skimming the surface when it comes to the depths of Lake Baikal. But so these are serious divers working 150 feet down. These aren't just dudes with snorkels. So while they were down there, these divers reported seeing humanoid shaped creatures that had these long bodies. They said they were about 3 meters or 9 feet long. They said they had the kind of like silvery silhouettes. And the stories you hear from a few of them have a few different like elements to them that are just like strange. One of them, or a few of them, said that they had spheres on their heads, like almost like they had some sort of a breathing apparatus. And two of the divers specifically said that they had above their head what looked almost like an umbrella, which is a strange thing to have underwater. You're really
You're wet already.
Yeah, it's so I mean, and again, I'm sure it wasn't a umbrella, but that's what they reported it looked like. So you get the impression that these divers are seeing something that they don't recognize or understand. Now, whenever they did eventually surface, told their superiors, and the superiors said, "Well, if they're down there messing with our stuff, we need to go capture them, stop them, do something." So over a period of time, there were 7 divers that went down basically trying to corner or capture one of these things in some way, shape, or form, or drive them away. Uh, Now, in this process, apparently 3 divers died from basically the bends, trying to basically come back up too quickly. So, because
Which is
100,
just because they're divers. They know
yeah,
about bends and everything. They know about the gases and everything. So going out on a limb, or it was the assumption made that they wouldn't normally have done anything so foolish. They must have been being chased. They must have been
right.
scared.
Right. Yes. To choose a very painful death over because the band they call it the bends because it's a bad way to go
Oh, you
by
can
every
explode.
yeah, it's not good. Like it's a real bad way to go. So the fact that 3 of them apparently died, that tells you something was happening that they collectively at least didn't understand. And then in the following years, there's a bit of a scandal around this because apparently the army divers or the army, tried to basically cover this up or didn't acknowledge it necessarily, referred to it as a training accident. The kind of the usual rigmarole with something like that. And this whole story didn't come as a huge surprise to a lot of the people already in the area. And a lot of the stories associated with it kind of have like just like stood the test of time and kind of line up with a lot of the other things that apparently go on in this lake. One of the stories that was circulated around the same time, whenever this was being reported, just a few years later, there was a local fisherman named Nikolai who was telling these reporters and he lives in this village on the lake called Koltuk, about a fishing trip he was on with some friends. According to this gentleman, while the men were doing some night fishing, they saw these same large silvery humanoid shapes breaching the water and really, really, kind of scared them and everything. They tried throwing nets on them to try and capture them, but they were obviously unsuccessful. And this was apparently such a harrowing situation that the men never went fishing in that part of the lake again. And you have this kind of lining up with a lot of the local lore about these silvery humanoids with these tails. There's some that say they have hands that are almost like paws, like bear paws, which is like an interesting
Well,
thing to.
real quick, they're saying
Mhm.
they seen bear paws or they seen like scratch marks that resemble claws,
Both,
paws.
like both that they have like paws instead of hands, and other ones
Yeah.
saying that those are the marks that they leave look like bear scratches. Like I imagine like
Because I think
four.
about, yeah, I think
Mhm.
about classic aquatic cryptid. I think of Swamp Thing, which actually I don't think
Right,
I've ever watched that movie, but it was claws, but it was webbed, which makes
right,
sense. Like a
right.
bear paw. I mean,
Mhm.
bears swim, I guess, but they're not living in the water like
No, they're
that.
not.
So, yeah,
No, that is
I
true.
don't know how I feel.
Yeah. Well, I keep saying it, we need to do our aquatic ape episode at some point because there's a whole side of
Fair
Bigfoot
enough.
that's just aquatic Bigfoot. We'll get into that one of these days. But so this again kind of fits with the local stories that just kind of keep getting weirder and weirder. There is stories of these riders that people see in the fog, and this kind of goes into it being haunted. And some people say, "Oh, those are these frog men or these humanoids." Some places they're referred to as frogmen, not like the Loveland frogmen, but this is like a little different.
Very different.
Very different, yeah. The Loveland frogmen were pretty benign. These things seem a little more
Well, and if
aggressive.
I'm like correct, it was like a grass species.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I mean, you have these like fog creatures and everything that are scaring people. What those elements apparently come from is there was a some sort of a warlord named Hassan Joson, who hundreds of years ago was leading a army across the lake when it was frozen, which like I don't like standing on a pond when it's frozen. I can't imagine standing on a frozen lake that is that deep. I just like
That deep?
I
No. I mean, obviously, I spent a lot of time on frozen ponds playing hockey and whatnot, and
right.
I've fallen in. The nice thing is my house was within sight, but
Mhm.
um,
Right.
the one of the
Yeah.
creepiest things about being on a frozen pond or frozen lake, if you're out by yourself, is sometimes you'll hear it sounds like a bowling ball rolling, and then it'll
Mm.
echo. And I've been out on
Oh,
lakes
yeah.
in the middle of the woods and skating and whatnot, and yeah,
Hmm.
that's a weird sound, and it's you hear it, and yeah, it echoes.
Yeah.
It's a spooky sound.
It is a spooky because it sounds very like, yeah, because I've heard that on Moraine when being out there
Oh,
before. And it's
sure,
just,
sure.
yeah, it's just,
But then when you're out on the ice and you think about, but you get, for me it was just something I did, so I never thought like
mhm.
of it being risky. But yeah, if I were standing on it and I'm like, oh, this goes down 5,000 feet, and I'm wearing heavy
Yeah.
skates.
It doesn't take a lot to kill you with cold water like that,
Well, it's just a lot
5,000
to think
feet.
about. Oh, there's
Yeah.
maybe a few inches of ice, and it's all the way to the bottom.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. Yeah, like 5,000 feet isn't that much worse than 50 feet, but it's still just I don't know. Something about that just weirds me out even more. But so you have this Hassan who is moving an army over the lake, and apparently the one whoever they were going to try and ambush prayed to their god and everything. And the lake ended up cracking and swallowing the whole army. And so these white riders that people see now being chased off of the ice whenever it does form, people say they are the army terrorizing people. just yeah, fog on a lake like that that's that deep, and
Yeah.
you know it has swallowed whole armies before. Ugh, I just I don't know. I just don't like that. And those are referred to as the mist riders of Lake Baikal, which is just a
Now, is it just the
cool
mist and
name.
they just coined the mist that, or do people see figures?
They
Do
do see
people
figures,
claim to
yeah.
see figures?
They say ghostly figures, yeah. And some people say like, oh, are these ghostly figures they're seeing in the mist just these same Baikal swimmers just above the water? Again, there's this kind of a Venn diagram of weirdness here. One of the things that people also say, they're like, oh, well, these Lake Baikal swimmers, those are just the white flame dragons, which apparently live in the lake, and that's again goes back to the kind of indigenous folklore of the area back a few hundred years, which they say is this, this white dragon-like creature that lives in the lake, which again doesn't necessarily sound humanoid, but I guess when we're talking about things that just shouldn't be in the water, they kind of all get like lumped in together, I guess. So there's a few things like that that kind of go back into the indigenous past and everything for this lake. But then we do have some more modern things. There was a UFO flap specifically over the lake in 2012, which isn't that
No,
long ago
very
when it comes,
recent. Yeah.
yeah, compared to some of these other stories that are a few hundred years old. The reports that you see are everything from like the flaming white balls that we hear about sometimes to actual craft. Everything from the black triangles that we're used to like cylindrical metallic looking objects that just sit above the lake, which are kind of creepy.
Now, are they talking about like the cigar shaped, because there was a time when that was a common
Right.
description for in like the 60s and 70s for UFOs.
This one that I'm looking at from 2012 says a silver metallic cylinder. So a little different than a cigar shape, but yeah, those were really popular for a period of time. And
Yeah,
it's
they kind
funny
of
how
fell off.
well, it's funny how that works with like UFOs a lot of times tend to be a few. This is again going to the mundane explanation, but back with the airwave flap in the late 1800s, you have people seeing UFOs, and then cut to a few years later, and we have Zeppelins and like dirigibles and stuff like
Right.
that.
Or just how much the movie Fire in the Sky influenced people's what they claim to see.
Oh, totally. Yeah, exactly. And that's why, like, I mean, you see in the 80s, you see the black triangles start, and then a few years later, we have the U-2 and the stealth bomber,
Well,
So
the U2 was around well before the
that's
80s,
true. That's true. That's
but
true.
but
Yeah.
you are right with the stealth bomber, and I know I've talked
Hmm.
about being over in Canada and coming back into the
Hmm.
U.S. and seeing one over the Peace Bridge in the Buffalo area, and it was incredible because you could not tell it was on you until it was right there.
Which is a whole different kind of scary,
It was
right?
such a dramatic looking. It didn't look like any plane. Again, Black
Yeah.
Triangle. There's no doubt in my mind that a lot of those descriptions were people seeing
Right.
test flights or just, when it was still
Hmm.
flights of this, when it was still classified. And yeah, if you weren't aware, you could be totally forgiven for looking at that and being like, what? There's nothing on this
Oh,
earth.
totally.
I can't explain it. It's so divergent.
Right.
I
And it,
remember when those were huge news.
oh, for sure. And it makes you wonder if like the propensity or the prevalence, excuse me, of like the cigar shaped UFOs, um, in some of the saucer shaped UFOs, like from the 50s and everything, if those were just like, test craft that never made it into the public sphere,
Yeah, and we know
or
for a
something.
fact because we've even talked about this sometime before that there were attempts to make a saucer-like craft. The videos I've seen didn't look very
Oh.
promising, but we've talked about that
Hmm.
before.
Right now with drone technology, think of how many, like in retrospect, when people are looking back on this, how many UFO reports from like the early to mid 2000s where people are talking about how things move. If you read them now, you're like, that sounds exactly like a DJI drone.
Well,
You
we
know,
talk so much about lights in the
yes.
sky and
Hmm.
then flying in formations and then
Hmm.
they'd scatter apart. So what looked like one ship initially, it didn't separate it. I remember
Oh
hearing
yeah.
stories about that out west, but now. That's just the standard light shows that people are doing with these
Oh
drones.
yeah, yeah. And
So why couldn't have been that?
right, precisely, precisely. So yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going on at like Baikal in general. So you have these swimmers, you have all the kind of like indigenous tradition related stuff with the riders and the white flame dragon.
Yeah, just from
Um,
a history perspective, I think that the riders is a really interesting story. I want to come
oh,
back
that's
to the
cool.
swimmers real quick, though.
Yeah,
These verified these were professional experienced swimmers,
yeah.
divers.
Yes. So when we look at this, what we have is we have city of Severodvinsk. I'm sure I'm getting that wrong, but that's my best shot at it. Has a port there in Baikal. And back in the 80s, you had the Ministry of Internal Affairs and you had the Ministry of Emergency Situations. Most people think that these divers were related to the Ministry of Emergency Situations, and they were the ones kind of doing this work. So they were part of.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to say military, but there were government. It was a government
The
organization,
bottom line is that they weren't sending amateurs out.
right?
So one of the questions I have is
Hmm.
they did recover these bodies, did they not?
Apparently, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And
So was there any damage to the bodies, to their gear?
no, everything I found just said they died from the bends, not that they were killed by these swimmers.
Well, I'm not saying that
Yeah.
they were or not, but I'm were killed by anything or not, because
Hmm.
obviously you had said that they had died of the bends, but the speculation, of course, is that something was chasing them. That's why they would do something as foolish as they did and,
Hmm.
came to the surface far too quickly than is advisable. Multiple people did as
Hmm.
much. It did make me wonder, did they say, well, there were signs of damage to the hose or like just damage to their gear or
I didn't
whatnot?
see anything like that. And again, a lot of these original reports come from this Russian and Soviet ufologist named Vladimir Azha, I think.
We'll go with it.
We'll go with that, Azha. But he was seen, I kind of get the impression he's kind of like a Gray Barker type character,
All right.
where he's taking a lot of stories and just kind of running with them. He has a bit of a dubious credibility, it seems like, but you have a lot of people coming in afterwards saying like, yeah, this guy might not necessarily be the most reliable, but we have all these other stories around it, and we have the like news articles from the time. I couldn't find any actual articles, but that doesn't mean they're not out there.
Right.
They were referenced, and you know, and again, I don't read
Well,
Cyrillic,
one
obviously. So, um,
and again, so not everything was digitized. This was the 1980s, you say.
yeah,
And
yeah,
even if it has been digitized, that doesn't mean we would have access to it out here.
right, right. So there's a little bit of, but what people are saying is like, even if the like official story doesn't quite line up, a lot of people do think that there's been enough like shady stuff happening there from a military standpoint over the years.
Sure.
People said they tested subs there, like not like full size subs, like Hunt for the Red October subs,
Hmm.
but like smaller subs and everything. They were a little more mobile, and people, you know, just like things like that. But again, like you get that with a lot of places like this in every country. That's not specifically a
Sure.
Russian thing, you
Well,
know.
any military thing, especially if there's speculation, well, one, any military is going to be investing in new technology,
Oh, for sure.
and they're going to
Yeah.
want to keep that kind of under wraps. But it does sound like, experimental submarine, especially for the purpose of like deep sea investigations for
Hmm.
not only for things like shipwrecks and sexy things like that that draw a lot of interest, but more so for like mineral
Or
acquirement.
working on utility lines or underground pipelines or
This
like
sounds like a perfect place to test such things. 'Cause
right.
how deep does the San Andreas Trench go?
This, oh, you mean yeah, you're thinking of, oh my God, I'm blanking on
Hold
this.
up.
Um, Marianas Trench.
Yes.
Yeah, Marianas
How far
Trench,
deep does that go? That goes, okay, 36,000 feet.
which is which is way deeper. That's yeah,
That is
but
much, much deeper.
yeah,
The average ocean depth apparently is about 12,000 feet. But it's still, it
yeah.
seems like that would be a good place to test.
Oh, it would have to be.
Because, you know, there's a variety of reasons. I'm looking
Hmm.
at like some depth stuff here. The Titanic wreck, that's in meters. Oh, and that's not, never mind. I'm just going to shut up. The bottom line is, it seems like a really good place to test such
Right.
things.
Well, it's like over here with, people look at like the Douglas Proving Grounds and Area 51 and places like that. It's like, yeah, it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's a great place to test experimental
Right.
aircraft.
It's an internal place.
Yeah.
The spies are everywhere, but it's not a
Yeah.
coastal thing. It's right.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, and again, like there are like really flashy things that could have been testing, but could have just been relatively, um, like logistical things. Um,
Let me throw this at you. Imagine, imagine it's 19, I don't know. Imagine it's 1954
okay,
and you are going through a lab and you're allowed to be there, but you see someone utilizing a microwave oven and
right,
you have no idea what it is.
right.
What would you make of that?
You put the things in this box. A light comes on, it
And they're coming out
whirs,
steaming.
and hot. Yeah, it seems crazy. Yeah.
Potatoes are exploding. It's because you're with all new technology, there's failure, but it's just
Right.
it like I think what you were getting at is some of the things that they could be testing could be something that we even in the military look at later as being kind of benign things like
Yeah, but it might
we're
have been
testing
super
this
secret at the
sub
time.
because we're going to need to have like pipeline repairs.
Hmm. Seriously, yeah. So it could have been stuff like that, and that could have been a big deal back in the day. There's a lot of kind of like quote unquote spooky stuff happening in this lake. There's just like a lot going on that I thought was, I don't know. It's funny when you see these hot spots that are out in the middle, out in like the middle of nowhere like this. Now, a lot of people have speculated on natural explanations for the Lake Baikal swimmers.
I'm curious as to this, yeah.
Yeah. So again, from like an indigenous standpoint, they talk about this earthquake that happened, uh, way, 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 way back that formed the lake. We think geologically it was actually much older than that, and it wasn't the result of an earthquake, but there is some knowledge in deep history like that. But because this area is so like cut off from other oceans, like I said, it has some really unique creatures.
I'm sure.
One of the really cool ones is the Baikal seal. So the Baikal seal is the only freshwater seal in the world, and it is the smallest seal as well.
Probably because it doesn't have that gigantic ocean to bandy about, and but that's
Right.
interesting. And I think I have heard the name of that seal before.
Yeah, like they're only like 3 to 5 feet long, which in seals isn't that big. Um, they're super cute. I recommend looking them up. Look like a good time. However, them only being 3 or 5 feet long, probably not. People probably are mistaking a 9 foot long aquatic humanoid with a dome on its head for one of these seals necessarily.
I would agree with that.
They're kind of dark with a little bit of yellow on the abdomen. Certainly not silver creatures, you
Well,
know.
but more than that, and
Hmm.
again, they still could be mistaken, but more than that, they are a known thing.
Yes.
They're not like it wasn't in the 1980s, these things weren't regarded like pandas were in the 19
Right.
teens,
Right.
where
Yes.
they were cryptids at that point.
Hmm. And I'm sure they were hunted and everything, but I don't think that they're like endangered. Let me look. No, they're not even in danger. They're at least concerned. So like,
So
yeah, I mean,
but the bottom line is they were a known thing. So a
yeah,
diver, even if they initially mistook it for something else, something
right.
more, you would hope that they would quickly go through the list of things that it could be before
Right.
they start making risky decisions about coming
Yeah.
back to surface.
And if I know one thing from watching nature documentaries, it's that seals are very playful and super cute underwater. And I'd have a hard time imagining that scaring someone up 150 feet, like that.
Right. So what
Um,
other natural explanations for
so
what happened to the swimmers are out there? Because I think we can safely say that tiny seals are
yeah,
not among
this
them.
is low. Yeah, that's a low risk creature right there. So one of the other things that lives deep in the water there that wouldn't be seen quite as much is the oilfish, which is has an interesting name. You've probably seen pictures of these things. They look like 9 foot long sardines. They're kind of crazy looking because they look normal until they open their mouth, and you're like, that's a huge, huge mouth.
Yeah, I'm looking at one right now. It's not like big like alligator gar big.
No, but they get 3 meters, like 9 feet. That's not,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
they're cylindrical.
Yes, they're cylindrical. But I mean, they're definitely silvery. Um,
Yeah,
but
they
again,
definitely meet the length
they meet
requirements.
the length requirement, but they're not humanoid shaped, obviously at all. And I can't imagine them being like aggressive in that sense. But so like that's one of the bigger things in the lake. But again, probably not the culprit. Now, one of our favorite big fishes to talk about is we have the beluga sturgeon that lives in the lake.
Oh, yes.
So, fun fact of the day, what do you think the largest beluga sturgeon on record is?
You
I
know
was
what? I'm
sh
not even going to hazard a guess just because I know I'm going to be wrong. And when it comes to sturgeon of any variety, one, when I think Russians, I think like
Mhm.
these are folks that know sturgeon and
Right. You
all
would
things
think.
sturgeon roe. But
Yeah.
it's also like, for me, one of the really wild things about sturgeon is just how old they can get.
hmm
So I'm going to say like 300 years old and about as many feet. I don't know. How big was the
So,
sucker?
so the largest female ever taken on record was 23 feet 7 inches.
That's
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 huge.
massive.
That's
It doesn't
huge.
sound crazy, but then you look at like how tall a house is.
Right. But this thing was about, was like 2 tons and 23 feet long. There are claims that haven't been scientifically like accepted, but there's like evidence of ones that are up to 39 feet
Yeah. And
and
in the United States,
almost 3 tons. Yeah.
in the United States, a typical two-story house
Yeah.
gets to be right in there between like 21 and 25 feet.
And they have those like barbels and everything on the front, and like they're bony,
They're
like
ancient looking because
yeah,
they are.
because they are. Yeah. So like again, you wouldn't think that like again, not humanoid, but like and honestly, the sturgeon is probably too big. Like I'm sure some of them are just 9 feet long,
Right.
but like
They have to
as
start somewhere.
you guys are somewhere, yeah. At one point, every 23-foot long sturgeon was just 9 feet.
That's right.
That's our affirmation for the day. But again, not humanoid at all.
So, is there anything that I mean, I still kind of think that the oil fish is probably the most likely thing, unless you're going to hit me now with something like, oh, it's been rarely seen, but there are documents. This is a real thing. Is there anything that's more probable than the oil fish?
There's not. I
Because I
expected,
could
yeah.
imagine being spooked by an oil fish.
Oh yeah, no, it would spook the heck out of me. A 9 foot long sardine that has a what looks like a small mouth, but is actually a huge mouth. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't like that either. But it's not gonna. I mean, it's
Again,
not
a
as
professional
wonky.
experienced diver,
Right. Yeah.
unless these are totally new waters for them, which it could be, but
I
you would
could.
think
Yeah.
they'd give
Yeah.
you a
It could be.
rundown.
Yeah. It could be. But like, but again, you wouldn't think that if they surfaced, said, "Hey, we see these aquatic humanoids with domes on their heads."
Well,
Screwing with us down there. It's not like
here's another thing real
yeah.
quick though. The people that died from the bends,
Yeah.
how many were thereabouts?
It said three of the
Okay,
seven
three.
divers. Yeah.
And this is all in a pretty short time period, but I do wonder, if it was equipment issue and they were like running out of air or something was creating a malfunction,
That's
and
that's what
that
I
sent them up because again, how close are these tied to these supposed sightings of these things? This is just people taking two stories from an area and tying them together.
that's my guess here. I think what we have is we have a tragic, military or government accident where
Hmm.
three people supposedly lost their lives. And because of how spooky this lake is, it only takes one person to be like, "Oh, that was the Lake Baikal swimmers," you know?
Well, and also it's one of those things we struggle with. Like, oh, these were professionals. This shouldn't have happened. If it shouldn't have happened, there needs to be some explanation other than something mundane.
Right.
So therefore, this, that, or
Right.
the other
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. You can kind of understand how people make up something more fantastical because that's better than like, oh, like the pump hoses clogged
Right.
or something,
Right.
or like the generator died. Someone Yuri didn't bring the extra diesel he was supposed to,
Yeah.
like it's just yeah, I don't know. It seems like that, and because it's like, and we see this happen around here all the time, and this is not to get on my soapbox or anything, but this is what bugs me about some of like the missing 411 stuff and everything is that like if someone goes missing in a really spooky area and someone's like, "Oh, I bet Bigfoot got him." And then
Right.
all of a sudden, people are saying, that becomes the story instead of this person tragically losing their life.
Right. Because sometimes people just die. Sometimes people go missing. Sometimes
Right.
people are
Accidents
trying to go
happen.
missing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right, and I think you're right that that's kind of like the case of what we have here with Lake Baikal. Um,
Yeah. Still, again, interesting stories. I do agree. This seems to be tragic incidents that people are taking folklore and history and combining them into these news stories. But not to get off, but I think we should leave it there. I
hmm
do want to say, though, because you brought it up, yeah, the missing 411. I remember we've had multiple conversations where we've talked
hmm
about how interesting some of those stories are, but
Yes.
I gotta tell you, over like the last couple years, I've seen a lot more people have been looking into those more closely,
hmm
and it seems like a lot of those stories are much, I mean, pedestrian is not the word for it because a
Right.
lot of them are just terrible things would have happened,
hmm
but they're not nearly the mystery. Most of them is what they are presented as, and it has made me go back and watch some of those and read some of those stories, kind of
Yeah.
with a just a different light.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, we really need to do a missing 411 episode at some point. Because there's a lot to unpack there. Because I mean, generally speaking, you're right, especially in the last, I'd say, 5 years or so. David Paulides has had a rough few years because people have been, as stuff has been more digitized,
Right.
people are going back and being like, oh, this isn't as crazy as they thought. That being said, there are still some cases in those books that are wildly strange.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush with some of those stories, but I think generally speaking, you're absolutely right. We should do a 411 episode. I use the term 411 all the time. Still, that's like part of my lexicon now. Like just
Oh
this
yeah.
evening, I was going to pick up something off Facebook Marketplace, and I was going to like a truck stop to meet someone. And whenever
Where all good and legal
yeah,
transactions
right.
occur.
And like as I'm doing that, I'm texting my brother I just send him my location. All I say is, in case I got 411, here's where I'm
Yeah.
at, kind of thing. And I think everyone should do that more.
Well, and honestly, you and I go into the woods and whatnot, and
Yeah.
it is good to let people know not only where you're going to be, especially
hmm
if you're by yourself, or even if you're just like just you and I, but also,
Yeah.
how long you intend to be out, and just in case any
That's
because accidents happen, as you say.
yeah.
But yeah, we should talk about the 411 stuff
Yeah.
sometime in the future and really focus on, obviously there's been some criticisms that are valid, but where are the
Totally.
stories that are still like Boy, we are left with not really any answers, and any of the speculation
Oh God,
is
yeah,
deeply unsatisfying. So we need to get on that. But if you
yeah.
have an idea of something that you think we need to get on, or you think you need to get on here to set us straight or tell us a story about something, how do people contact us?
You can do that by finding us on YouTube or Instagram at the Ghost Furnace Podcast, or you can simply send us an email at the Ghost Furnace Podcast at gmail.com.
By the way, I just think before we say goodbye, I should say it. Is this episode 138?
It is.
Well, Brendan, you know what I'm going to say now.
I do. Please do.
We are 138.
We are 138.
Is it time to be an android or a man?